but the staff is using the language of on-brand and off-brand. And she said she could walk down the hallways and hear people say to somebody, you know, that was really on brand or that was off brand. So it's like that concept of what does the casino stand for? And we identified it using an acronym so that people became very, very well acquainted with it. For 2 days, that's what we taught to that brand promise.
Now, how long does it usually take when you're talking about this kind of transition that you work with on the casino, from the very first handshake where you say, okay, let's go do it, to where you say, look, we've got good traction here? What kind of time frame should you expect to have to experience?
I think about the minimum that you can expect is 1 year. It can be done a little bit faster depending on how much of the define has been done. But the define can take a chunk of time. But I've also learned how to do this fairly quickly. But then, you know, there's just a lot of setting up and arranging things that are going to take place. And there's also a lot of communication across different departments that has to be taken into consideration as well. I mean, in many companies that we work with, marketing does not talk with human resources. And when you're dealing with brand, that has to happen. Marketing and human resources need to attend the same meetings because human resources is dealing with the people, and the people are going to become the brand. Mm-hmm. So if the organization only thinks that the brand is about the marketing, the advertising to the outside, they'll never involve their internal people.
Well, that leads me to another question, though. I mean, this is a complex project, and experience says that there are a lot of companies out there that begin the road down complex projects, but along the way they kind of like either lose the faith or lose the precision of their vision, and they start stepping off the path and doing things to dilute the effort. What do you consider to be the key warning signs? Let's say someone's going to an on-brand service, and how do you recognize when they're slipping, when they're starting to not execute in a way that's going to help them fulfill that promise?
Well, that's where this is where measurement comes in. You know, you have to know how are we on brand? Are we still there? So the measurements will have a big impact there, and how you measure internally and externally. But I'll tell you this, Edward, for me, the big key as to whether or not an organization is successful is whether or not you can pass through from one CEO to the next CEO to the next CEO, and they still, you know, they still have got the concept of this is our brand, and our purpose is to deliver that brand in a consistent and reinforced manner. We've been working with Caribbean Airlines down in Trinidad and Tobago. They used to be called BWE, British West Indies Airlines, and we worked out a very careful definition for their internal brand. They had already done all of their logo definition. All of that had been done with an external brand agency, and we were able to work with that quite effectively. The CEO was very committed to this idea. He got it. He really got it, that you have to engage the staff, and then you can engage the customers. And British West Indies Airlines was a publicly held airlines, and the government decided that they just didn't want to support it anymore. It had always lost money. So they allocated a final sum of money, almost $100 million, and said, here's some cash for you to play with. Go out and create a new airline, but if you get in trouble, we're not going to bail you out. So they formed, this group of people formed the Caribbean Airlines, and we worked with them for a year on this process, and it had already started with the brand agency, like I think a half year prior to that. The CEO went through the whole first experience of it, so we got through all 5 of these sectors, and then he left. He returned to England, and a new guy came in, and he maintained it. It's still operational under him, and now he has left, and a new CEO has come in who is a former pilot. He's a local Trinidadian, and he's maintaining the position as well. Now, in my mind, I think this is a brand that will probably survive because
you made a very, very good point. It needs to be part of the organizational DNA, because I have seen so many service organizations over the years try to become good or try to become great by doing a lot of smile training and then restructuring or reorganizing, and at best all they get is new efficiencies or maybe lower costs. Well, whereas what really needs to happen is they need to define their organizational brand DNA and take that down to every single employee in the organization and get them to communicate that organization's brand. Then if they have a leadership change, it doesn't make any difference. They have that brand embedded in their organization, and they can communicate
the organization becomes the brand, right?
That's exactly right.
And then also, the board of directors has to make a real conscious effort to hire somebody in that senior level position who doesn't see that his or her mandate is to come in and change the brand.
Now, one thing that seems interesting to me here, because clearly the decision to go on brand is a top-down decision. However, the definition of the values, and it strikes me as probably a fair amount of the definition of the expression of the brand, comes from the bottom up. Would that be a fair assumption?
And I put, Kelleher, he was a former CEO of Southwest up here, and he says, you can, when you're in the same industry, let's say that you're in the printing industry, for example, everybody can pretty much print the same thing, but then how do you replicate that spirit of your people? And that's what Kelleher is talking about. That's the hard part about this. It's the soft part about this, and it's the part that you really have to make a hard case with money that you're going to get a return on investment if you do this. But if you look at the best brands in the world, the most valuable brands in the world, it's because they're able to consistently over a long period of time maintain this. Coca-Cola, take Coca-Cola for example. There is no way that they will ever hire a new CEO who will come in and say, well, I'm new here, so let's change the brand position of Coca-Cola. It's just not going to happen. It would be about the most stupid thing that Coca-Cola could do.
Well, it strikes me that if we take a look at the, shall we say, the evolution of the business environment, from industrial to a service-oriented economy, because clearly 63% of the GDP of most developed countries comes from service. And it seems like there's a bit of a lag time where the ideas around service are just now starting to mature and gel to the point where, first we realize, oh, we have to have good service. Well, now it's not just good service, as you say, but differentiating service.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. Well, Edward, I would say this, that one of the real advantages that we have in business is that people who have jobs in these companies, they want to get up in the morning and they want to go to work. They want to like their work. They want to like the products that they're involved with. And maybe it will happen someday where we will begin to teach in our schools, in our business schools, in our secondary schools, in our elementary schools. We will begin to really get people the idea of find out what you like to do in life, and then if you want to work for a company, if you don't want to be an entrepreneur, but you want to work for a company, go find a company whose whatever it is that they're doing, that you love, that you can really get behind them, and then run that corporation in a way where people can be proud that they're involved with this corporation. It's, to some degree, it's like nationalism. I love my country and I love what it stands for. It's not perfect, but I love it. I love waking up to being this particular person. And the same thing could be true for companies. I love my company and I love being able to say that I work for this organization. Take Google, for example. People line up around the block to work for Google. A lot of people would like to work for Google. A lot of people would like to work for Apple. Become that company that people want to affiliate with, not just because of your products, but also because you're a great place to work.
Well, because the culture is permeating.